You are listening to the Hammersy Brothers e-commerce podcast. Like what you hear and want to take the shortcut on your e-commerce growth? Join hundreds of brands that work with us and head over to joinhb.com. That's joinhb.com and see how we can help you further. Join our members and smash your targets and unlock the profits within your e-commerce site. Good morning, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, hello, Mark. Yeah, good afternoon. I'm well. It's the
Awesome.
hottest day of the year in the UK. Apparently for the last, I might have made this up, 60 years. Maybe I've made this up.
Wimbledon started yesterday, didn't it? So it must be pretty hot.
Yeah.
For Wimbledon.
It was like 32 degrees or 34 degrees Celsius, which is pretty warm for England, isn't it?
It is. And I don't think England's particularly built for that kind of heat. Nothing really has air conditioning, and offices.
No extreme. They're not built for extreme. We're built for just mediocre, drab weather.
Yeah.
You know, not too hot, not too cold. Just
have to adapt.
Grey. 10 degrees and grey. That's what we're built for. Consistent, safe weather.
I'm gonna talk about what we're gonna talk about because my son says we should get into it straight away.
He's right.
He's 17-year-old. He's like, people they want to know what you're going to talk about. So we'll talk about what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to answer at least 3 questions today. And the first 2 are kind of similar. So the first question is, what's the best way to validate a new product idea? So that's the first question. Second question we're going to dig into is, how do you know you have something that might scale? And the third question is, what metric can massively mislead you? And that kind of ties into those first 2 as well, but also across any e-commerce site. And then I'm not sure whether we'll get to number 4. We might do a whole podcast on that. And that might be, how do you know if your agency's any good? And that's quite a big question. So we might actually cover that in a whole podcast on its own. So let's go to the first one, how to validate a new product idea. And just before you talk to that, I think that there's 2 kind of ways. There's 3 kind of ways. First of all, there's people who want to validate a product idea who have no money, like no money for ads. That's one scenario. The other scenario is people who have money for ads and it's their first product. The third scenario is someone with an existing store who wants to bring in a new product and want to validate whether that's worth doing. So those are probably the 3 scenarios. So let's talk to the one person that's like trying to validate a product idea but doesn't have any money for ads yet, which is the hardest, to be honest.
Yeah. So you're trying to do it without any budget whatsoever or any commitment really whatsoever. You've basically got an idea, haven't you? You've got an idea, and you're trying to validate that idea. And
I mean, the trouble with e-commerce is it's a physical product, so you're going to have to put some money into the product to actually build it, to actually sell it, unless it's like print on demand or something like that. So it depends on how little money you've got. But if you're building your own brand product and you're going to do it, you're going to have to do a short run or some kind of production.
Well, hang on a second. Just go back. What the 3 scenarios? Just say those again because they're quite important.
Well, one was whether you got validating a product, but haven't got any money for ads. One was when you've got money for ads and you're validating a product, and the other one was like adding another product to a business that's already existing. So obviously, in that case, you've got money.
Yeah, but I think there's a scenario 0 where you have no money to get a product built, because I think that's probably the biggest leap. I think, to be honest, doing the ads is actually a much lower commitment. In some respects, the biggest commitment is actually trying to get hold of the product. And there's a few scenarios where, looking back at the e-commerce businesses that we've started over the years, and we've done various different validations. Some of them we've actually just gone and got a prototype. We've gone to the factory, and we've just got a prototype made. Literally just a one-off piece with a mock-up, like a one-off, prototype, and then that's allowed us to take photography and doing a couple of ads and build a basic product page, which is quite easy. But in other scenarios, you can't do that, and you're trying to validate the offer. And what the mistake people make is when they're trying to validate a product idea is to go and talk to the mates. And the mates go, yeah, great, you should do this. You should definitely go and create that custom, kayak paddle. That's amazing. I'd buy one. I'd definitely get one. And then you're like, well, okay, would you? All right, it's £200. We want the product. Oh, no, we'll come back to you on that one. So you can't necessarily go to your mates. The best thing to do with that scenario is actually go to the people that are talking about and passionate about it. Go to the forum and the hobbies and actually start up a conversation. Say, this is who I am. This is my story. This is what I'm thinking about doing. If I did this, would you back it? Do you think there's a need? And you'll get lots of comments, because the one thing that people do like to give is a comment, particularly if it's a hobby or an area that there's always some expert, isn't there? I mean, so that's where I probably would go for the very, very, if you've got no money for a prototype, no money for ads, it's just an idea. And let's assume that you've listened to some of the other podcasts about margin, life to customer value, average order value. So as well.
I mean, what you would do in that situation is you'd do like a Kickstarter kind of style campaign. But the trouble with Kickstarter was fantastic at the beginning, where lots of people could kind of get their ideas in front of people very easily. And then Kickstarter became a victim of its own success, whereas the people that only got big money on Kickstarter were the ones that could pay money to advertise on Kickstarter. So what you'd probably want to do is have some kind of forum or group of people. So let's say it's trail running, right? So trail running, there's lots of Facebook groups on trail running. You come up with an idea for a product, and then you say, look, this is a product I'm thinking of doing. I've put myself onto this crowdfunding place, and if I get $20,000, I will make it and I'll send it out to people. And there's nothing better than validating an idea with actually getting people to pay money for something, to actually upfront some money. It's like I've had a friend when I was at university, and he did a product, and he did some customer surveys, and went out and stood in a car park and said, what do you think of this product? It was for supermarkets. And like everybody said it was really good, like you said, but like when he eventually created it, no one bought it, or very few people bought it, because people just want to tell him what he wants to hear.
True story, that actually, isn't it? I remember, I know who you...
Yeah.
And what's it called? Oliver.
Ollie did it. And it's very different. It's much better to do that kind of product launch, kind of Kickstarter model, where people are actually putting money down towards something, because people opening a wallet and actually spending money is actually... It's so far away from people saying, yes, I probably would buy one of those. There's a big leap between those two.
There is, yeah. The interesting thing about what Ollie was doing was he was creating something that didn't exist, i.e. there was nobody else selling it. So it wasn't like he could look at the market and go, there's a supplier who's making a product that everybody's buying and it's really crap.
Well, let's tell the people what it was. It was in London, and it was carrying bags of shopping back to your flat, because people didn't have cars in London as much. And so as you're carrying the bags and they're heavy, they cut into your hand. And so it was like this protector that went on the bag. It was inexpensive that you could carry. And he stood in a car park and asked them questions, say, what do you think about this? And everybody said it was great. And then when he produced it, like very few people, not enough people bought it to actually justify the supermarket putting it by the tills, and also to justify the business. And so, like, it was one of those things where it was one of the first times I learned about it, when I was thinking, okay, well, what should he have done? And that's like when you actually have to validate it with money. You have to actually get people to back it. So would you want to be one of the first backers?
Do you know what? Interestingly, now he could have done it with 3D printing, couldn't he? Whereas at the time, he had to go and get injection molds made. I think he was like 20 grand to go and get the injection molds made, and he could have just...
he had to put a lot of money into it.
He could have just done it really simply, couldn't he? But basically, nobody really wanted it. And now you'd look at it and go, well, that was no lifetime customer value. Average order value was way too low. Margin was, by the time you'd cover it was fine if you're selling hundreds of thousands, but not at the level he was doing it. It just didn't go, did it? But also... just as an aside about lifetime customer value, because
I was doing some numbers at the weekend. I was looking at an investment and two scenarios. One where it had lifetime customer revenue, and one when it didn't. And I was surprised because I was always like, oh, it must have lifetime value. It must have lifetime value. And I was like, when I looked at my calculations, I realized it didn't really matter whether it had lifetime value or not. But what mattered was the CAC, the cost of acquiring a customer. Because if you've got the cost of acquiring a customer is really low and it just continues to be low forever, it doesn't matter whether you get a customer, an order from an existing customer or a new customer. You know, if you think about some of the businesses that sit outside, like someone like really busy, like sit outside Alton Towers and he's got some kind of like burger van or something like that. Like all those customers will be new, but his customer acquisition cost is just super, super low. But it's still a great business, you know, because it's the CAC is low. And so like for Ollie's business, it wouldn't necessarily be mattered if he didn't have lifetime customer value, as long as his CAC was just really, really low all the time and it just churned through it. So it comes down to, again, as another aside, the reason that CAC does matter in e-commerce is a lot of the time the cost to acquire a customer from Google or Facebook or Meta or Instagram is high, and it doesn't tend to get low. It doesn't tend to get super, super low a lot of the times, and so therefore you have this hurdle to acquire a customer, which is similar for a lot of businesses, and therefore the ones that have lifetime customer value tend to win out. And but in other businesses that doesn't make sense, like because it's not online. They've got a good position. They're always working with new people. You know, like it's just the way certain businesses work. I think it's criteria of online.
I think basically it's all relative to your industry. When I was chatting to somebody today, and they were selling health and supplement brands, and you know, it's actually quite a low margin, you know, but it's quite a high repeat, you know, nature of what it is. So it does take a little bit longer to get your money back because the margin's like, you know, 30%, 25, 35%. But the lifetime customer value is good. They're buying, you know, 3 times a year. So you cannot increase. It's hard to increase the average order value because they want one particular supplement. So, you know, you just have to accept that it's going to take longer. But you know, but it's all relative. I mean, obviously, in an ideal scenario, you're right. It doesn't matter whether or not you got lifetime customer or value or not. It's like, well, how much did they spend on the first purchase, and what's the cost of acquisition, and what's our margin? You know, that's what you really want. And if you can get them to spend more on the first purchase, great. You get the cash bit quicker. But in some businesses, you can't. You can't. But ultimately, it's interesting.
It's coming back to validating a product without any money. So let me say what I would do. If I ain't got any money at all, I'd be on a Facebook group or a forum that, first of all, I could understand and I could talk to, and I could, was the product that I wanted to get into. So I'd probably be doing, let's say, something with camping or hiking or something like that. And then I would probably design a product that I thought was interesting, hopefully around the information that I knew about lifetime value and those kind of stuff. If it was consumable, that would be great. And then I would then set up probably a cloud funding thing, probably not necessarily on Kickstarter. That's the mainstream. Maybe one like local to the community, maybe one in the UK or maybe one in New Zealand, wherever it was. Because there's lots of the ones in New Zealand that's just specifically for some of them are just for art, some of them are just for like theatre shows and those kind of things. But like I'd find one that was relevant to that. I probably wouldn't promote it through the platform as much, and I'd go and get that community to fund it. And I'd hope probably with the first one I was doing, I'd probably do it. I'd only try and raise about, you know, not a huge amount of money, and I'll see if I could get something started based on that. And therefore I get my money up front, I can make the product, I can deliver the product, I can get going. If I wasn't doing that, like if I didn't want to do a product, then I'd do what everybody else does, which at the moment is I do print on demand, and I'd find a niche which effectively I don't have to put any money into, because when I sell it, it gets printed and sold.
Well,
I mean, that's exactly what I did with Ben, my son. Like I wanted to teach him business, and he hadn't got any money. He's just, he was 15 years old when we first started. So like he wasn't going to go and have stock and do all that kind of stuff, but he's a good drawer. So I was like, well, these people look like they're doing some good stuff in America. Why don't you do a version of that? And that's how it started. And he's done about $100,000 so far in his business, which has been quite amazing. And then yesterday I'd had to teach him how to do his GST return, which he got completely wrong. He's like, how do you do this? Why do they teach this at school? And I was like, well, for a start, like if you actually looked at a YouTube video, like it's funny because when he's doing Shopify and he's doing all those kind of things, he's straight onto YouTube and he's straight onto ChatGPT to find how to do it. When it comes to tax, because he's not interested in it, he's like, why is this not just super easy? It's because everybody, when it comes to tax, is boring and they don't want to learn about it. So, yeah.
So,
anyway,
yeah,
we're
going back to our story, with Take Bedding, the bedding brand that we launched. That was
so that's the second. That's probably scenario 2.
The second,
money.
Scenario number 2.
Yeah.
We got some money and we were able to go and get some prototypes made. And we got some prototypes. We basically got the minimum viable quantity that we possibly could. So whenever you go into a trade show, you'll hear people asking as they go to the trade show, what's your minimum quantity? Minimum quantity. Basically, they're saying what is my minimum risk? What's my I want my minimum exposure. I want to test it. There's no way I'm going to go and do all these colors, and you want to go in with the minimum viable risk whatsoever, and that includes the website and the team and the your Shopify building your ads. And so when we were launching Bedding Envy, we got the minimum quantity possible, the shortest run. We got it air freighted over because we didn't want to wait for the container coming. Minimum air freighted over. We got some basic photography. We threw up a simple site that was very naked, and we just threw some pay-per-click ads at it. And
did we? I know we did a physical product photo shoot. I can't remember whether that was before we launched or that was
before, because we did the photo shoot with the prototype. I mean, it wasn't even the real product. It was like we launched with an 800 thread count Egyptian cotton, and the photo shoot was like a 250 thread count, whatever it was.
Well, see, because nowadays we wouldn't even need to pay for that photo shoot, because that was probably one of the biggest costs, was the photo shoot and obviously the stock. That was one of the bigger costs. With AI, you wouldn't need to do that.
You would have been able to do enough to have tested it.
Launched.
So, to launch, and and that would have been fine. But basically, we launched, and the website was very basic, but it was good. It was good enough. It had the basic things that we know. Obviously we didn't deliberately make it crap. We did it. We did a reasonable job. But what was it?
It was by no means flash.
It was by no means flash. And we launched it. We threw some ads at it, and we got a pretty poor conversion rate. But we got a ROAS of like 1.8, I think, didn't we, in the first week?
It was. I remember running. I wasn't necessarily in the first week. It was like at the beginning, it depended on the offer. So we hadn't got anything on the website in terms of trusted credibility or anything like that. We had no reviews, we had nothing. And so the only thing I could really use was kind of offer architecture to get some interest in it. And so I tried different offers to work out what might work. And I think I got it to around like a 1.8, like 2 ROAS or something like that. And then that was the first validation. And then I went back and said to you guys, look, we need to have a bit more margin in it, because you were telling me at the beginning that we needed like a 5 ROAS based on our numbers. And it was like, well, that's not going to work. So we need a product where we've got a slightly bigger margin, because we're probably going to because what you can see then is once you've validated it at that level, you can say without any trust and credibility, without any optimizations, without any email, without all the stuff, without even good ads, we're getting to like about 1.8. So I think that I could probably get to like a 3, 5, 4, based if I add all the stuff to it, and get there. And then you kind of go, well, is that enough for a business? And then we looked at the number sheet and we're like, well, no, it's not. That's still not going to be where we need it to be given the current costs. And so then we went back and worked on the model and kind of got that into position where it would make money at that point, and then we came back to the market and we started building around that. And one thing, if you look at
what we did?
Yeah.
Sorry, can I say? Do you want to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say
the
interesting thing.
For God's sake, you go. Fine.
The interesting thing about Bedding Envy was if you look at the cohort analysis of lifetime customer value and average order value, is that, and I went through it with someone on a call the other day. Like the average order value was about £60 at first, and now the average order value is about £200, and so the lifetime value is much higher. And it's just like as you build that trust and credibility in the site, you do get better as you grow, because people are more comfortable giving you more money. And so you just need to know what it looks like at the beginning and where it's going to get to.
And also,
but if you don't getting any sales, it's not going to. You can't scale that.
Yeah. And we also push the higher average order value products more because we're getting a better RAS. We bundle them better. We bundle them up together. We help push those things rather than the individual pillowcase. But what I was going to say before was that once we'd got the validation there, I actually opened the dialogue with the supplier in India, and I called them up and I said, right, got some traction. This is what we want to do. We want you to design a product that you can give us a margin of 70%. And the reason we want to do that is because we can then operate the business at a ROAS of this. If you give us a margin of 70%, we can grow much faster. We can increase the volume. The sell-through rate is going to go. So we're in it together. I didn't play one supplier off another one trying to get the price down. They can do this price. I shared the vision. I shared the growth model. I shared the number sheet. I showed them how fast we could grow if we operated at this margin, and actually got them to design and architect a product that was the quality that we wanted. But it's like we wanted to have a 70% margin. We didn't want to compromise on the quality, but there were certain things that they said, well, if you just come down a little bit of the thread count, you can get this fantastic quality product. Washes really well. It's amazing, and we could operate at 70%, and that's what we did. And that conversation continued.
And also, the conversation was not in a vacuum. We took samples of the stuff that was available in the UK from the top brands, and we knew that we were better than them. Yeah. And we knew we had better quality than them, because
and we were
our cost model was always going to be way, way lower than theirs, because we don't need to have.
And we were prepared to go at a lower margin initially, knowing that if we could scale it and we could get the volume and we can then go for a higher margin because the production went up, and it was but sharing that knowledge with the factory was really interesting. So I mean, but most
does that
time,
answer that question? How do you validate a product when you've got a bit of money? Probably not. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. How do you validate it? You validate it by selling stuff, right? You can sit in your room, your bedroom, or whatever at home, and you can pontificate over this, for years, and but you cannot do anything if you leave the the plane in the hangar. You got to push the plane off the cliff and build the wings on the way down. To a certain extent.
Yeah, to some degree though, but I think as we're more mature now, like the businesses we started in our 20s, we were literally like, will someone buy it? And that was enough. And we were like, oh yeah, we're getting sales. Now when we launch something, like we know where we need to get to in order to get profit and do the profit we want.
We will know if there's an opportunity in the market before we've even thought about what the product is. Before we've even gone to the factory. Because I think, and as you get older and more mature and more experienced, instinctively whether or not this has got legs, right from the conception of the idea. It comes in and it goes, and it might go because the margin. I mean, Richard Branson. I would say that we are very similar to the success of Richard Branson. But what he said,
I'm sure he listens.
You once phoned me up, didn't you? And you left a voicemail with my call answering service and said, "Oh, it's Richard Branson on the phone." And my PA phoned me up and said, "Oh, I've got Richard Branson." I was like, "What? Who? Put him through." And obviously it was you.
It was,
you. It was my early on in my career where I still had naivety that believed that Richard
that he would call you
recognize
out
my
the blue
talent and see.
Yeah.
But going back to my story, what Richard Branson's done, he hasn't come up with an original idea in his life. He just takes existing services that he thinks are being done badly, and he goes, can I add value here, and can I re-engineer this? And that's what he does, and he's done that with his planes and his hotels.
I think he probably came up with some original ideas, Ian. To be honest,
he says not.
Oh, we're saying it's his. I thought
said.
that was your opinion about him.
No, he said.
I'm just saying, if he does listen, and we don't want to offend Richard, him, we're quite happy to come out to Necker Island and spend some time. After,
and you'll say, Mark, why? Ian's right.
Yeah,
he has never come up with an original idea. It's his own, but he's deliberately saying that. It's, you don't need to come up with an original creative idea that's never been done before.
I think the key
it's a waste of time. That's very, very hard as well.
No, I think you can see a lot of people who've done really well in New Zealand have just watched what's happening in America and brought the thing to New Zealand because no one cares about New Zealand in terms of market. If they're growing in America really fast, like the last thing they're thinking is like, we need to dominate New Zealand. There's 4.5 million people there, so the people in New Zealand can go, like Grab One was an example. He was called Groupon in the UK. So Grab One was made here before Grab One came here. The same with eBay. eBay didn't come here until late. And so there's Trade Me. So it was all these kind of businesses that people just went, well, we'll just do that in New Zealand because they're not going to have a chance to come and get this market. But just going back to what I was talking about before about how we used to start up businesses and how we start up businesses now, is that we start up businesses now knowing what we want the business to do for us ultimately, and whether or not it has the legs to do that, like ultimately, if it's successful. Whereas you take the business, one of the business ideas in our 20s we set up, which was like the Find Your thing that we sold to, we didn't sell it to them in the end. We did it for Comic Relief, and we did that product. And it was a product that basically you could text your postcode to the television, and it would send your local event where your local event for you and all that kind of stuff, or tell you where the product was. My idea was that you'd be looking at a magazine, because print ads were huge then, looking at some headphones, and you'd text your postcode in and it would tell you a local stockist. So I was like, find your nearest. And that was the whole product. Like at no point did I validate like how much I could charge for it, or like what the recurring would be and what the sales model would be and all that kind of stuff. It was just like naivety of youth of like, can we sell this? And so we put out a thing, and we just started the business. And I would never do that now, because I'm just so much more aware of the meta tags, the other things that are available that are around businesses that to need them to be successful. And so therefore I'd be saying, well, is that business one I want to get into? Is that a business I want to run? Is that a business that could scale to what I would be meaningful? And so there's all those other things that I'm looking at that I would have to need in validation. Whereas in my 20s, I was like, just want something to sell.
It also depends. It depends on what you want out of it, doesn't it? What are we saying? Do you want to validate your e-commerce product idea for a really nice, supplementary additional income that you can run alongside your kids and your family? Or do you want to validate a product idea that can get you to 20 million? It's a different. But also, would you ever know that at the start? I mean, it does depend on what you want. You just want a little bit of a side hustle. I think that's interesting.
I think if you can find a framework and says, okay, get a product that has 70% margin, that has an average order value of 1.6 a year, and blah, blah, blah. You could just, at least you could start with something like that and validate something within that framework, and you're not going to be far off.
Let's do the third one.
Yeah.
Let's do the third one. The
third one is... Well, you can say it if you want.
Well, okay. Sometimes in podcasts, we talk over each other all the time. In others, we don't.
I think it's because there's a delay today, and that's why.
Oh.
And I don't know why.
Oh, right. That's interesting, because I'm like, you got to get slightly annoyed that you're talking over me.
Are you on the VPN? I'm not.
I don't... Maybe. Probably. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yeah, it does seem
Sausages.
It does seem sausages.
This is our word that we use because obviously with you being in New Zealand, we grew up with Skype, and obviously there was like a 30-second.
It was
delay.
dreadful when I first moved there to New
really
Zealand, like 17 years ago, and it was like you'd talk conversation, you'd have to let the person finish, and then you'd have to start talking. Like it was literally a serious delay. It's amazing how technology's moving on forward. Yeah,
it is. But
I am on the other side of the planet, literally.
Yeah. The third question was if you've got an existing business and you're trying to validate an idea that, you know, it's a new product launch, but you're already online, you're already selling, and it's something new. And I think that's probably the easiest one. So we're working with a big cosmetics, health and wellness brand at the moment in, you know, the Nordic countries. And they're saying, look, we've got a great market share, and we want to validate the idea because our customers are buying stuff for other people. They're buying stuff. Our customers are buying things from other people that we don't sell. That's kind of in our range, and we want to move into that. And that is, I think that's a much easier one. The simplest way you can do it is by launching it as a pre-order, and say coming soon, and you just do a pre-order, and you can just go. How many pre-orders do we get? The notifications will notify me when it's available for pre-order. That you can launch that into your list. You're in a really nice position to do so because you can get numbers. You can, in some respects, you can actually ask for, for cash up front, and then off you go. I
think the gift is that there. Product launch. The product launch into your warm audience of people who already buy stuff and love you is. I mean, it's a great way to obviously launch the new product, but it's also another way to sell existing product at the same time. Imagine if you had a clothes store and you were managing to get people to come into the clothes store every week to come and see the progress on the new product. They're going to buy stuff in the store because they're there. They're coming to have a look at it and go, oh, we'll go and get some pair of shorts because I'm here and stuff like that. That product's not quite ready, but I love what they're doing and I love the products and I'm really bought into this company. And so the kind of newness of product launch works really well.
I think that third one is probably the most exciting, game-changing thing that you can do actually in a particular in an e-commerce business. I think we've seen businesses like in the UK the people that made the shampoo and conditioner and they were the health and wellness brand doing about couple of million for a couple of years, and we went, well, look, really. The lifetime customer value of this product is not that great. Margin was good, average order value was all right, but what you can really do with is getting them to buy other stuff. And so they launched shampoo and conditioner, and that business now is on the way to doing probably 20 million this year coming. And that was a complete game-changing moment for them that took the business from 2 million to 20 million. They could never have done that with the existing product set that they had.
No,
it just wasn't possible. The maths were not there, and this was an unbelievable turning point for the business. It was like the album that the musicians wrote, that was the defining album. That just put them, and that's what happened. And I've seen that happen several times, where they've done a product launch within the list and it's just gone whoosh. And now that particular business, 95% of their new customer recruitment is on those new products they launched, and the existing ones they're not recruiting any new customers on. It's turned the other way. They're using the existing product as a retention product. I think it's brilliant.
It becomes easier when you can see the metrics of the business. You can understand exactly how close you are to it, and you go, well, if we only had this, then that would be great. And then you go, well, that product, we brought that product in, then that would make sense. And I think you've got to look at the brand you've built with your customers. You need to bring it in something that sits under that brand that makes sense to them. And so you've got to think. I always think about brand extension and that product. It's like, well, what do they think we do for people? So I remember this. It came at I can't remember. I was working at Michelin Tires at one point, and I was thinking, well, what? No. It was it was Stanley Tools. You know Stanley Tools? You make knives and stuff like that. So, and they brought us in. I was at university. It was a project, and they said, right, you need to come and like create some products for us to do it. And then we were useless, and we didn't know what we were doing. But eventually, Stanley Tools started to build out like toolboxes and all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah. And so what it was the brand of Stanley Tools representing in people's heads something that was sturdy, that did the job, that was never going to let them down. And so therefore they could expand into that. They could bring other products into that. And that was basically the big realization that I had, is that brands represent something in people's mind. And therefore, if you add products, you want to add things that add to that. Whereas Stanley Tools had gone and added like a shaving kit, like, because they think, because we do knives, it was going to work. It's just like doesn't make sense. It's like not what they do, not what they stand for. We did say at the beginning we were going to do another question, but I think we'll do that next week. The metric that massively misleads you, we'll do that next week, because I think this whole podcast has been on validation, and I think it's quite nice to just have one subject about the whole thing. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we've rambled a bit, but I think, we've got there.
Yeah.
I hope you can do a lovely summary at the start, which people can listen to. Yeah, which makes sense.
Well, I won't. I
agree.
Yeah. There are people who work for us who have to slice this up into pithy clips. Poor bastards have to watch it and go, oh, well, he's kind of almost said something there. Then, like,
no, he's lost it. It's gone. He's drifted.
Gone.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a nice evening.
All right, Mark. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
See you next week.